beginning of America, at the turn of the century, a huge political movement came out lambasting the Bavarian Illuminati. You know, there's some sort of alien, foreign influence here that's affecting us politically and socially, and we're calling it the Bavarian Illuminati. Washington chimes in. He actually is asked directly in a letter about it, and he first speaks about it in like 1790. He says something along the lines of, oh yeah, I've heard of that. Yeah, it's not really a concern, I don't think. No big deal. Then 10 years later, somebody sends him a copy of John Robinson's Proofs of Conspiracy, and now he says, yeah, there's something to be worried about there. Ramsey gave the famous speech that referred to Freemasons being somehow connected to Templars. What was born out of that is what became known as the Rite of Strict Observance. They totally implied the Templar connection. They began to initiate and dub knights as Knights Templar, connected to the Grand Lodge system of Bavaria and Germany, right? And it was something that was completely, everyone embraced it. There was a marrying of the two, of the strict observance from Germany with the continental degrees that had gathered all around. The Scottish Rite came into America in the 1750s through one man named Stephen Moore. This is the official history. He was a traveling person who came from France, went to Jamaica first, where he established Freemasonry there as well. He travels from the Grand Orient of France in the 1700s carrying a package of degrees that were a loosely fit group of rituals. What happens is that degrees are sort of like, they'll float around. Like 1 degree tradition can float around lodge systems as like a side degree that's done like between regular lodge meetings and orders. So, like for example, there's one called the Ancient Order of, the International Order of Turtles, okay? And it's, I'm a turtle. It's like a drinking order, kinda. One of the astronauts held up a sign in the capsule that they filmed, said, "Are you a turtle?" The turtle order, that's the question. That's like, the catechism, the order back and forth. So if you ask somebody, "Are you a turtle?" there's a certain response. And if they don't respond properly, they owe you a drink. That's it. That's the whole order. That's a side degree. You know what I mean? There's no Grand Lodge system that owns that degree. The side degree will be gathered into a group of other degrees and become an order or a rite of degrees. That's how they formed in America. Itinerant Masons traveling around lodge to lodge, bringing these little side degrees around and saying, like, after the lodge meeting, "Hey, Greg, you want to become a turtle?" You know what I mean? And like, you're like, yeah. And so we go over here and we do a little bing, bang, bing, give you a little secret handshake, blah, 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 now you're one. So that's how they form. And that's how the Scottish Rite started, as a group of side degrees. So he left France in 1750 and travels to Jamaica with this handful of degrees that they were under the Rite of Perfection. That's what they were called, the Rite of Perfection. And they make up, remember, there is 32 degrees in the current Scottish Rite, ancient and accepted Scottish Rite, okay? Well, he took the 15 from the Rite of Perfection and expanded them to 25 somehow. He got from like France to Jamaica, and now he's got 25 degrees. I think he was a hustler. I think he was an itinerant Mason who was a traveling hustler. Morin shows up with his 25 degrees and basically, "Hey, Fred, you want to become a Scottish Rite?" We've just had a lodge meeting, you and I, in Palmyra, New York, some backwoods, lodge, right? And then after the meeting, I'm like, "Have you heard of Rite of Perfection?" And you're like, "Huh? What? What's that? Rite of Perfection?" "Oh, it's 25 degrees. They come from the continental degree system in Europe. I'm willing to share that with you. I'll make you, a Mason in the Scottish Rite, and you can make other Masons that way. When I leave, you can do that too. It's going to cost you $5, and I'll give you a certificate, and I'll give you a stamp, and I'll show you how to do this, and give you the handshake, and tell you the secret word, and read you a couple little historical scripts, and bammo, now you're one, and you can make other people one." Remember, they pay you $5, and you got to send $1 back to France, or you can put it in a little fund and hold on to it until they show up, and then you can pay them, whatever, however. And if you want to borrow against that fund, that's completely fine, whatever your expenses from travel, you got to deduct that from the $5 too, right? And of course, making the printed out little certificates, however you get those done. So that's how it starts, right? And the next thing you know, there's enough of these little Masons in these areas that they decide to all meet on a certain night in this lodge building. Albert Mackey and Albert Pike meet in New Orleans in 1852 or something. By that time, the Scottish Rite is merely back to just being a handful of papers. According to Albert Pike, he received the the degrees of the Scottish Rite in 25 degrees, and he said it was a pile of rubbish, that he couldn't even use any of it. So Albert Pike, he's a character that comes from the East. He went to Harvard, and he actually was able to go through 2 years of Harvard in 1 year. He took like accelerated, he was a very smart man. This is the legend. And they wanted to charge him for 2 years, even though he'd only been there for 1 year. And so the legend has it he dropped out and rejected Harvard and moved to the frontier. Ends up in Arkansas, where he reads the Roman law, teaches himself how to be a lawyer, sets himself up in a practice where he ends up actually becoming the defender of the Indian tribes. He's also one of the few people that was tried and found guilty of treason after the Civil War, because he was, he commanded an army of Indian tribesmen for the Confederacy, was a member of the Knights of the Golden Circle, they say. And they say he was a member of the Ku Klux Klan, that he actually wrote the ritual for the Ku Klux Klan. First he became an Odd Fellow, one of the Odd Fellow Lodge, and then he became a Mason, and he joined the York Rite and Knights Templar, and became like a high priest of the Royal Archmasons, and he became a Grand Commander of the local Arkansas Grand Commandery and everything. But he only got so far with it, and I think he was disillusioned or dissatisfied with that. And then along comes Albert Mackey with this handful of degrees that are being like almost defunct. I think he saw an opportunity to capitalize on this system of degrees that had this claim to authenticity, the Continental Degree System, a historical claim. And I think he saw a means to an end for himself, because he set himself up as the supreme grand commander of the world under this thing. You know what I mean? He takes the Rite of Perfection, the 25 degrees he receives from Albert Mackey, he turns them into 32 degrees, and then makes it the Lodge of Perfection and the different orders. He makes it 4 orders broken up to create the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite. And then he writes this Morals and Dogma book, which basically, from my perspective, that book is completely a plagiarism of Ritual and Dogma of High Magic. He was a 19th century writer, French writer. He went under the pen name of Eliphas Levi. It was written like right before Morals and Dogma. I mean, there's stuff that's like, I'm telling you, you could just take it from one thing and put it right over here. He even had illustrations that are in both. I think that he created Morals and Dogma as a rabbit hole, as a dead-end cul-de-sac.